Hello and welcome to this edition of IABM TV. I'm delighted to be joined in this session by Hiren Hindocha, the co-founder, president and CEO of Digital Nirvana. Hiren, welcome.
Thank you, Darren.
From your website, I got the following statement to summarize Digital Nirvana, that Digital Nirvana's knowledge management technologies empower organizations across the globe to create content, automate the generation of captions, subtitles, and metadata, as well as monitor the delivery of broadcast media. Is there anything you'd like to add about Digital Nirvana before we go on to some questions?
No, so not a lot, except to say that the organization as such is believes in leveraging technology to solve customer problems. And today's set of technologies are AI and machine learning. And that's been our focus for the past few years.
Yeah, I mean, I don't normally start the IABM TV interview with that kind of summary, but, you know, AI and machine learning are certainly, I think, two things that are high up on the list for customers in broadcast media right now to look at and to apply to their own businesses. And probably also people are looking at AI and ML because that kind of trend or that kind of benefit has been accelerated by the pandemic. Is that something you've found with your customer base, that those kind of business needs have been accelerated by the pandemic?
Yes, so two trends have accelerated. One is the pandemic has made enterprises realize that their business depends upon friction-free workflows, and that can only happen if your workflow is digitized. It's easily accessible from anywhere where your employees are, be they at home or they be in the office. So essentially what that timeline that everybody was expecting to be 5-10 years has been compressed into 1 year. The pandemic has made enterprises realize that they need to accelerate this adoption of cloud-based technologies, allowing people to work remotely from anywhere. As you can see from the explosion of use of Zoom, people are beginning to realize that indeed you can, yes, there is Zoom fatigue, but nonetheless you can conduct business as long as you have interaction that is captured and that knowledge is captured someplace. Yes, there are other effects. You know, the social aspects of being in one place is a completely different matter. But from a business perspective, adoption of these technologies, primarily the cloud-based technologies, and once you go down that route, then the subsequent adoption of other technologies makes it very, very profitable or efficient for enterprises.
Yeah, and I think if there's one trend throughout the broadcast media customers around the world that I've heard that during the pandemic was to make their organizations and their workflows more efficient, for sure. So in terms of Digital Nirvana, obviously you've been very focused applying AI and machine learning to broadcast workflows. What do you see as the key trends and use cases in this area?
Well, one of the things that has happened in the past few years is the pace of change has accelerated. Technological changes that enterprises had 10-15 years to absorb is no longer there. You don't have that luxury. What is happening is the innovation timeline has compressed and is accelerating. So if you look at the pace of technology, I mean, just look at iPhone being introduced was around 2009, 2008. It's very recent. And look at the amount of economic activity it has generated. That is just the mobile phone. you now add a whole lot of advances in chip development, in software development, and specifically now in machine learning and AI, and there's a huge amount of changes going on. And what is happening is that the papers that are being published by the big tech companies are breakthrough papers with breakthrough technologies. All articles that I've read, all documents point to 2017 when Google released a paper. I don't really remember the exact title, but as attention is all you need is what the paper is titled. But that paper created a whole storm of new ideas in computer vision, in natural language processing, in speech to text. And that has now created a whole lot of technologies that can be applied to broadcast. Essentially, the way that we see it is so let's take like the speech to text, for example. Speech to text technology has advanced to a level where it is almost pretty much human grade speech to text. So the applications of that are people are just now trying to figure out what are the areas where they can be applied. I mean, on a broader scale, you're seeing it being applied in, if you use Amazon Alexa, or if you use Google's Assistant, or for that matter, Siri, or any kind of voice commands with any voice assistant. That's an example of that, of using speech to text. Or if you've ever interacted with the customer service agent over the phone, an automated customer service agent, that's an example of speech to text. In broadcast workflows, there's a tremendous use case for speech to text. The one that we can think immediately is caption generation. That workflow, which required humans to do the editing, that has become much more efficient because the speech technology, the quality of the speech text technology has increased tremendously. So the amount of the work required by a human has decreased dramatically. But what that means is that you can do more content. You can create more content, you can do more captioning. That's one example. Another example that I can think of is in translation. I mean, the explosion, right? So one thing, going back to the pandemic, is been the consumption of content by people, right? And the consumption of content from different parts of the world. That has what has opened up ideas for content generators, that you can be anywhere in the world, and if you're able to create good content, there is an audience for you worldwide. And the distribution channels that are there today, all the streaming platforms, make it very easy for your content to reach multiple parts of the world. I mean, the popularity of Squid Game on Netflix is an example. It's a South Korean show, and it's the topmost streaming show on Netflix in their history. So that brings us to what I'm calling, what we need is a language translation. You have content, which is not in English, but it's in Korean, and that needs to be translated into multiple languages. So subtitling is also seeing a huge change in that automation is bringing the ability to translate into multiple languages quickly and efficiently. That's another example of how speech to text machine learning is being used in broadcast workflows. Another example of machine learning is the use of AI and machine learning for metadata generation. So metadata generation is, what is metadata generation? So an example of that would be, you have a show, let's say a reality show, the great baking British show. What is that on Netflix? It's really popular.
The Great British Bake Off.
They get British Bake Off. That's a reality show. And so it's a half-hour episode. And that half-hour episode might have 10, 15 hours of footage. Now that 10, 15 hours of footage, somebody needs to describe what is in that footage. So then an editor can make the choice of figuring out a way to make the edits. Today, what is happening is that is done manually. Somebody actually goes in and describes and summarizes the scene. The trend is moving towards where you can use speech to text to generate that, and then use AI to figure out where there is action happening, where there's some moment happening, right? And so the entire idea here is that you are compressing the time frame for creating content and making it more efficient. That's another example of what is happening. So,
yeah, I think it's reflective, isn't it, of the current trend at the moment in terms of having global content providers that have global distribution platforms. Therefore, to them, they want to syndicate the content as much as they can around the world, which means localization services are going to become even more important to make that content relevant to where it's being played out. And in some ways, it's almost a self-fulfilling prophecy because the demand for content's greater, more and more content's being made, and therefore they need to be more efficient workflows in the process of making that content and archiving it and storing it. And I guess from your last comment, it's not just about the metadata around the edit side. It's also perhaps from the marketing side where an automated system can start to find screen grabs or pictures of relevant parts of the production to push out to social media or any other promotion that they want to do around
absolutely.
That particular thing at the time. So that's great, and that's really interesting, and it's absolutely, as I say, on message in terms of what's on trend itself within the broadcast and media industry. Moving on, so what do you see as the largest obstacle to using AI in post-production workflows?
I think there's a huge run on talent in the industry. Just as I was driving down here and going back to the pandemic itself also, I was listening to the survey that they're saying LinkedIn just came out with a survey that said that a report that said that about 50% of people are changing careers. The pandemic has made them realize that they need to reevaluate their priorities. And we are seeing that all across. And in the tech world itself, even though there is knowledge, as in papers are being published, and you need somebody to implement that. And there's a huge lack of availability of talent that is happening. That is one example. The other example is to be able to put together these technologies into a solution. That while there is R&D happening in these spaces, when I say R&D, I mean R&D from the broadcast workflows, as in not in R&D on the AI ML side, but to take those technologies and then put together a solution. That is slow. That is slow. Right now, the content companies are the ones that are not already on the cloud are scrambling to adopt the cloud technologies, and that comes with a whole set of challenges. So they have to deal with that, and then on top of that, while they're dealing with that, they also have to deal with this huge wave of new technological changes that are coming down the line, and they have to be able to adopt that. And all of that stuff takes a little bit of time, and you need the right kind of leadership to take you along that path, or you need to rely on innovative companies to help guide you there. One good thing that I see in this movement to the cloud is it's allowing smaller companies to come up with solutions. Earlier on, the problem used to be that you need to be a bigger player to be able to get inside the enterprise of a large broadcaster and do something in that workflow. Now, when it is in the cloud, it becomes very easy for an innovative small company to put together a solution that is just as good and scales just as well as any other large company. It is being able to put together these technologies into a cohesive solution that solves a customer pain point. That is the one thing that I see happening, and that is creating a lot of innovation.
Well, that's good to hear, because I think this industry over the last 15, 20 odd years has had a history of working with large companies, but also small companies that can innovate quickly and deliver the solutions that they want. So that's good to hear that that's still happening. Finally, what new products and services can we expect to see from Digital Nirvana in the near future?
So one of the things that we've been working on is generation of metadata in real time. So the use case that we have in mind is take a large news organization. A large news organization would have a lot of incoming feeds. Well, those incoming feeds is monitored by a whole set of people. And when there is something of interest, somebody needs to describe what is in that feed. And then when you identify that I want something from that feed, what is the mark-in, mark-out point for that content that you want? And that is the metadata that is currently being generated manually. And we are changing that. We are automating that piece of the equation. And we feel that this solution that we have, which is MonitorIQ with real-time transcript and going towards summarization as well, is the ability to accelerate the generation of news content. That's what we're working on. And that's what you'll be seeing from us soon.
Well, I look forward to seeing that, possibly NAB in 2022, if we all manage to get there in one piece, safe and sound.
Yes.
Hiren, it's been a delight to talk to you. Thank you so much for your time.
Thank you, Darren.